Hey, and welcome back to Math Extra. My name is Mr. O'Neill. I'm a math teacher at Piedmont, IB Middle School here in Charlotte. This is the season finale, and we've got a lot to learn, so let's finish strong. All my 8th graders, here we go. Let's do the math on Math Extra. Today's lesson is one of my favorite lessons. It's on parallel lines, intersected by a transversal. So I love it because it's like a puzzle. You're trying to figure out what angles are what. It's all about relationships, and that's what math is really about. And so let's look at the lesson for today. Take a look at all of this. It's a lot, and so I'm going to break things down so it's no longer a lot. So we have parallel lines M and N. Okay, so parallel lines M and N right there. And they are intersected by the transversal of line L. Intersection of transversal of line L. So basically, a transversal is basically a line that intersects two parallel lines or a pair of parallel lines. That's all a transversal is. It's the line that intersects the parallel line. So let's look more deeply into the lesson. So whenever we have the alternate, there are 4 types of angles that are formed, okay? So this is the first set, the second set, the third set of angles, and the 4th set of angles that are formed. But before we get into that, I want to remind you of what you learned in 7th grade. So for instance, if I give this angle a measurement, say for instance I say this angle is 30 degrees. I give that 30 degrees. What is the angle right here next to it, okay? So it's the angle right beside the 30 degrees, okay? And you should know that if you have a line that is formed from 2 angles, that's a linear pair, or those angles are supplementary, which means that those 2 angles add to 180 degrees. So now let's figure out what this angle is, okay? So if 2 and 3 add to give me 180 degrees, then 30 away from 180 would be 150, okay? And so I'm going to watch me as I go around to figure out the rest of the angles. So I know angle 1 is 30 degrees, angle 2 is 150, and so 2 and 4 are right beside each other, and they make what? That linear pair. So 150 plus 4 should give me 180, therefore 4 has to be 30, all right? And then as I move right next to 4, 3 and 4 are right beside each other, and they make that linear pair. So if 4 is 30, then 3 has to be 150. All right, y'all. So I'm starting off showing you that it's all about relationships. And so today's lesson is about relationships. If you understand the relationship, you will not have any issues. All right, let's continue on with the lesson. And so as we move down, somebody may say, well, how do I get down here? What about this down here? Well, if you look at this line N has the same slope of line M. Therefore, I could technically move line N up, and it will be the same line as line M. So this angle 6 right here is the same angle as angle 2. So what is angle 6? 150, okay? So if you understand this relationship, when we move around the angle, if it's the same angle as the line and the 2 intersecting lines above, then, hey, it's gonna be the exact same angle. So let's get into the lesson. So if angle 6 is 150, then angle 5 has to be 30, because 5 and 1 match each other. And then if angle 5 is 30, then angle 7 has to be 150. And then if 7 is 150, angle 8 has to be 30. So again, when you understand relationship, this no longer is hard. As we move around the angles, they have to make a linear pair. And if these angles are the same as the ones below it, then, hey, I know what those measures are. Now we're going to get into the special type of relationships that form from these angles. Let's look deeper. Okay, so alternate interior angles are angles. Let's talk about the words. Some students always say, well, why are we reading in math? Because math is a language. We still have to understand what words are. So what does the word alternate mean? Alternate means to switch, all right? And interior means inside. So what's happening? These angles are switching inside. Inside where? The parallel lines. So inside of the parallel lines, if I have angles that switch across the what? The transversal. If they switch across the transversal, they are called alternate interior angles. So 4 and 5 are alternate interior, and 3 and 6 are alternate interior angles. So here's the deal. It's really about alternates means switch, interior, inside. Where's the inside part? Inside of the parallel lines. So where are they switching? Across the transversal. Again, it's about language, it's about relationship. When I understand that, I won't choose angles outside the parallel lines, right? Because interior means inside. Now, speaking of outside, let's look at the next set of angles. So, alternate exterior angles are angles that switch. And where are they switching? Outside. Switch outside where? The parallel lines. So 2 and 7 are switching outside across the transversal. 1 and 8 are switching outside of the transversal. Okay, 2 and 7 switch on the outside. 1 and 8 switch on the outside. So again, if I understand alternate means to, or alternate means to switch, exterior means outside. Outside what? The parallel lines. Switching across what? The transversal. Then I understand how to find these angles. All right, let's look at more. All right, so let's look at the third set of angles in the bottom left corner. Corresponding angles. Now notice that this angle is here, corresponds with this angle here, here, this angle is here and here, this angle is here, and this angle is here. So where are they located? Well, I see one angle on the outside of the parallel lines and one angle on the inside of the parallel lines, and they are on the same side of the transversal. Now, I know that may be a little confusing, so I'm going to go in deeper. So again, I'm saying one angle's on the outside, one angle's on the inside. There may be an angle on the inside, there may be another angle on the outside, but it's important that you understand where it's outside and where it's inside. Outside is outside the parallel lines. Inside is inside the parallel lines. So let's look at corresponding angles one more time. So again, 1, bottom left corner, X is on the outside, X is on the inside, and it's on the same side of the transversal, all right? So that angle, corresponding angles over here, back in the middle, the center angles 1 and 5 would be what? Corresponding. 1 on the outside, 1 on the inside. And now angle 3 is on the inside, angle 7 is on the outside. So again, corresponding angles have one angle on the inside, one angle on the outside, inside the parallel lines, outside the parallel lines, on the same side of the transversal. All right, so let's move on to our last set of angles, okay? Here we go. Vertical angles. Vertical angles are down in the bottom right corner. So this says that 1 and 4 are vertical. And where are they located? They are diagonal. They are diagonal from each other, okay? And then 2 and 3 are vertical. And where are they located? Diagonal from each other. Now, one way I remember vertical angles, V, vertical starts with V, right? And so if the angles make a V, when you form two V's together, they make an X. Watch this, because you're just like, what is he talking about? Watch this, okay? So I can see that angle right here, angle 1 and angle 4 are vertical. And what do we see? We see the V's. And when you bring those two V's together, those V's form an X. Okay, so what do we notice about every angle that I've gone through? Let's look, okay, because it's very important. So when we look at the angle measurements, if I'm talking about alternate interior angles, I'm top left, we said alternate interior angles switch on the inside. So angle 4 and 5 are alternate interior angles, and notice that angle is 30. Angle 3 and angle 6 are alternate interior angles, and notice that angle is 150. Those angles are congruent. Let's look at corresponding. Nope, alternate exterior angles, top right corner. Let's go here next. Alternate exterior angles. Notice that 2 and 7 switch on the outside. What is their measurement? 150. Okay, they're equal. And what about 1 and 8? They switch on the outside. Notice that they are equal. What are we discovering? We are discovering that these angle relationships are congruent. I know it says it on the screen, but again, I'm showing you why we know they are congruent. Let's look one more time. And then vertical angles. If I have vertical angles, I'm in the bottom right corner. Vertical angles, I say 1 and 4. Notice that 1, change my color here, angle 1 and angle 4 are vertical. Well, that's 30 and 30. And then we said 2 and 3 are vertical. Well, that's 150 and 150. So here is the thing. These angle relationships make congruent angles. We went through and I showed you that as we move around, we have to make a linear pair, but these angles are special. And how are they special? They're all congruent to each other. So alternate interior angles are congruent, alternate exterior angles are congruent, vertical angles are congruent, and corresponding angles are congruent. Now, when you understand that relationship, you'll be able to move on and help me answer these questions, and that's what we're about to do now. So here we have, I call this my little cheat sheet over here because I know I just went through a lot and I don't expect y'all to remember all that I just said. Okay, so that's our little cheat sheet on the side. Okay, this is our cheat sheet on the left side. Now we're going to go through and answer these questions and apply the angle relationships to these questions. So the first question says, name all angles congruent to angle 1. So this is angle 1. Now, I want y'all to listen to me real quick. There are many ways that we can go about finding the relationships because these angles are intertwined all over the place. And so I'm going to show you one way, but it's not the official way. You may see another type of relationship to get the same answer that I'm going to get, okay? So let's look here. So it says, name all the angles congruent to angle 1. Well, I like to start with vertical angles because they're easy to make the V. So I'm going to say, well, I know angle 1 and angle 6 are vertical, okay? Check relationship. They are diagonal from each other. So I know that angle 6 is congruent to angle 1, okay? And now I want to go from 6 to another type of relationship. Well, 6 and 3 are alternate interior angles because they switch inside the parallel lines. So do you see what I'm doing? I'm talking about the relationships that exist to find the congruent angles. Now, you can't do that if you don't know the relationship, all right? So let's go back into the lesson, 8th graders. So 3 and 6 are alternate interior angles, so I know that angle 6, it's an equal sign with a little squiggly mark on top. So angle 6 and angle 3 are also congruent. And now I know that 3 and 8 are vertical, my favorite type of angles. And I know that 3 is congruent to angle 8. So how many angles are congruent to angle 1? Well, I just found out all the angles that are congruent to angle 1 by looking at the relationship. Okay, so there are 3 other angles that are congruent to angle 1, and those angles are, let's look back at the lesson, angle 6, angle 3, and angle 8. So I used vertical angles, and then I used alternate interior angles, and then I went back to vertical angles again. All right, and now we're going to move on to the next question. The next question says, name all the angles that are congruent to angle 2. So I'm going to start at angle 2, okay? And this time I'm going to use a different relationship. So I'm gonna go, and I understand that 2 and 4 are what? Corresponding, okay? And how they're corresponding, because we have one inside the parallel lines and one outside the parallel lines on the same side of the transversal. So I know relationships, so I know that 2 and 4 are corresponding. Now let's take it deeper. Let's find some other relationships. So I'm going to now say, well, I used corresponding there. I didn't talk about alternate exterior angles right here. And so let's choose alternate exterior angles. So 4 is on the outside, check. And then alternate, that means it needs to switch across line L to 5. So I now know that 4 and 5 are congruent because they're alternate exterior, which means angles that switch outside the parallel lines across the transversal. All right, we have one more angle to find, and let's see if we can find that relationship. So I need to get to 7, because 7 is all lonely, hasn't been highlighted, hasn't shown any love to it. And so how are 5 and 7 related? Well, they are on the same side of the transversal, one on the outside, one on the inside. They are corresponding. So I have angle. These are my red angles. I have angle 4 is congruent to angle 2, which is congruent to angle 5, which is congruent to angle 7. Well, I just made less than or equal to. Didn't mean to do that. Okay, so which is congruent to angle 7. Now, again, we can't get this unless we know relationships. All right, I think I've said it enough. All right, let's move on. So it says, name 3 pairs of supplementary angles. Well, we went through that earlier, and we said in order to be supplementary, they have to make a linear pair. So we have angle 1 and angle 2. Okay, and the reason why I know that, because they make the linear pair of the straight line. Again, it's all about knowing the relationship. All right, let's find 2 more. All right, now I'm asking for 3, but there's so many of them. Okay, so I now can say that if I'm looking for a linear pair, I can say 4 and 8 right here are right beside each other. So angle 4 and angle 8 are a linear pair. And the last linear pair, I can say maybe I want to go back to 1 and say 1 and 5. Angle 1 and angle 5. Now, there's so many other type of linear pairs. I just chose those because it just asked for 3, but we can get an exhaustive list of linear pairs. And let's go back to the next question. It says, now I'm going to erase this because it's getting a lot here, and I know y'all are like, oh my gosh, this is really getting confusing. And to answer the next questions, I'm going to use the same graphic, but with all the extra annotations gone. All right, so let's look at the next question. It says, if angle 2 is 100 degrees, so if angle 2 is 100 degrees, okay, what is angle 4? All right, y'all, here we go. I have to know relationships. I've said it over and over and over again. Okay, so let's look at angle 2. Where is it located? Angle 2 is on the inside. So I need to get to 4, right? If I want to get to 4, then I've noticed that it's on the inside and 4 is on the outside across the, well, on the same side of the transversal. Clearly, they're corresponding. So they are what? Congruent. Congruent means the same. So angle 4 has to be 100 degrees. Okay, let's look at the next one. I'm gonna change the color so we don't get confused. Okay, so it says if the measure of angle 1 is 75. Now these are all different problems because I know somebody's gonna be like, well, 75 and 100 doesn't make 180 degrees. We're just hypothesizing, okay? So if angle 1 is 75, what is the measure of angle 8? All right, so 75 is on the outside. What angles deal with outside? Exterior and technically corresponding can deal with outside, okay? So those are our two choices, but 8 is right here. Well, 8 is switching across what? The transversal. Therefore, it has to be alternate interior. And what do we know about alternate interior angles? They are congruent. All right, so I know that this angle, which is 75, has to be the same angle that's 75 because they're switching across the transversal on the outside of the parallel lines. All right, so we have 75 degrees as well. Again, 75 here, 75 here. They switch on the outside across the transversal. Remember, this is the inside of the parallel lines. Okay, and now we have the last one. It says, what is the measure of angle 7 if we know that angle 5 is 120? All right, so this is 120. What is the measure of angle 7? Well, here we go, y'all. What is it about? What is it about? What is it about? Relationships. Okay, so here we go. Let's look. So, angle 5 is on the outside. What angles deal with the outside? Maybe alternate exterior, maybe corresponding. And then 7 is on the inside. Well, can't be alternate exterior because exterior means both angles are on the outside. So if we have one inside, one outside, that means this 7 is corresponding with 5. Therefore, 5 has to be 120. Therefore, 7 has to be 120 degrees. Okay, so we went through this lesson, and if we understand relationships, it's not hard to figure out what angles measures are what, okay? And so again, the lesson is about relationships. When you understand a relationship, this is not hard at all. Well, that's it for this lesson today, y'all. I hope you enjoyed this. I know it was a lot at first, but as you realize, things become more simplistic as we practice and as we recognize relationships within the show. Here are parallel lines intersected by a transversal. That's our 8th grade lesson for the show. And man, that's it for this episode of Math Extra. Y'all, that was an epic finale. This was a lot, but you know, in this season, there's been a lot going on, but we've been here to support you along the way because we care about your education and we want to make sure that we're setting you up for success as you move on to the next level of your education. Y'all, we're in this thing together. I'm Mr. O'Neill, and on behalf of the entire Math Extra team, be safe and be smart, and we'll see you next time on Math Extra.